I think what's nice about the Filmmakers Festival Award is that it's a festival about making films as opposed to watching films. It's more about understanding how films get made, and to get an award from a festival like that is fantastic. It's not, it sort of says, oh, he knows how to make movies. He just doesn't make movies that are popular, but he makes movies that are, you know, technically good, and that's nice because it's like being awarded a prize for being a good craftsman, it feels to me. Well, I think a film like Fisher King is more commercial film. I mean, it's telling a story. It's a romantic story. It's funny. That's more commercial. You know, it's going to have a bigger audience. Then you make a film like Brazil, and you know a lot of the audience is not going to like that film. They're going to be attacked by the film, and they're going to feel uncomfortable, and they will leave. That's okay too. But eventually, it finds an audience, its own audience, and something like. We made Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Some might say, oh, that's going to be commercial because it's got Johnny Depp, Benicio del Toro, it's a famous American book. But in fact, it wasn't commercial in the cinema. It became hugely commercial in DVD, but it took time to find the audience. No, my attitude, my approach is, yeah, it's, I suppose, difficult to maintain. I think I was very lucky. I think what happened in my case is that with Monty Python, we started and we got a lot of momentum going. I mean, we made Holy Grail, success. I made Jabberwocky, which wasn't a success, but at least it began. Time Bandits became a big success. So you get a lot of momentum going very early on. It wasn't like I was a filmmaker that started from nowhere and worked up. I was with a group that just came in quite high. So that gave me a certain amount of momentum and a kind of confidence and maybe arrogance that other people might not have, because everybody said our stuff wouldn't work. It worked. And I keep making films that people say won't work, and it works. So you get more confident about your own ideas and your own belief in the way things work. But it doesn't get easier. That's all I can say. Each film I make is like I've never made a film before. Getting the money is really hard. It requires patience and just... I don't know, I find as I get older, it gets even more difficult somehow. Maybe my ideas get bigger and the budgets are getting smaller, and these two things may never meet. Everything I do in a film develops. It's all very organic. So you start with ideas. Let's say we got basically the story, and then I'll start collecting images, books, everything. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. There's an idea, and I just like a magpie. Oh, that's pretty. I'll pick that one up. I'll bring that back to my nest and bring all these things in, and then I start making the film. And some of those things fall away. Other things happen. Film Tideland, my latest one. When I read the book, one painting came into my mind. It's a painting by an American painter called Andrew Wyeth, and it's called Katrina's World. And it's a painting with a clapboard house up on a hill and all this grass and a woman or a girl almost crawling to it. And I called the writer of the book and said, did he have an image when he was writing it? And he said, Katrina's World. So I realized we're talking about the same imagery. And then Nicola Pecorini, my cinematographer, went out and got some books on Andrew Wyeth and his paintings, and we discovered the movie was in these paintings, and we started then going that direction. And then once you've got those kinds of images in your head, you start looking for locations. Oh, there's a house that kind of reminds me of that. And little by little, it starts forming itself. And then certain things will come up that are completely different than you thought of. In an instance, say, in Brazil. Brazil was, as you went into the ministry, got deeper and deeper, it became more and more rectangular, more and more hard-edged. And so when the original idea of the torture room, the torture chamber, was a cube, a white cube, about 40 feet in all directions, and a chair in the middle. But when I was looking for locations, we went down to this power station in London, and it was fantastic because we used a lot of it in the film, all this machinery. But then there were these big cooling towers and these great elliptical shapes. And I said, what do they look like inside? And we looked in and said, that's the torture chamber. And it's completely different than what my original concept was, but it's better. But I think it's by being so clear in your mind what you're trying to say that you can then make these big shifts and it'll still be okay. Because it was more surprising to me. You're going into a world that's getting more and more square, closed in, and suddenly you get to the very heart of it, it goes, and it goes into a different shape. So for the audience, it's like, oh, that's an incredible feeling. And it's a surprise. So it was a surprise for me, so I know it's going to be a surprise for the audience. So we work that way. Animation. Where do we start with animation? Because I think, well, that's where I began. And it's, I think the first film I remember was Pinocchio, or Snow White, one of the Disney animated films that I grew up just loving. Chuck Jones, you know, animation was all around me, but I never wanted to be an animator. That was what was strange about it. I wanted to be a film director, and yet here's this strange path. You know, it's like my films are like my life in a strange way. So I was going there to be a filmmaker, but the detour was animation, which in Python terms made me well enough known to get the money to become a director. So it was a strange thing. Animation is still, I suppose, the thing I'm running away from, because I think my early films were very much like animated films. I thought like an animator. I thought in frames as opposed to scenes or the whole film. I used to sit at night cutting certain sequences, and I'd pull a frame out here, and then I'd put another frame in there. It was like I was an animator still, but I was working with images of real people. And it took a while to escape from that kind of skills, because when I was doing animation, again, I wasn't able to do beautiful Disney-like animation. I didn't have the time or the money, because the first animation I did professionally I was on a show and I was doing caricatures of the guests, and they had this material and they didn't know how to present, and I said, I'll make an animated film. So I had 2 weeks and a couple £100. So the only thing I could do was cut out pictures and move them around in a very crude way. It went out on television. Nobody had seen that in England, that kind of technique. And I was an animator overnight, and I got stuck doing it for a few years. Yeah, I mean, that's why I've always loved special effects, whether it's computer generated, whether it's maquettes. They're tools. They're tools, and we use them. What was interesting about Brothers Grimm, I began that project wanting to do everything physically, like an old movie. Everything was maquettes and models. In fact, it didn't work out that way. We had a terrible time, and we had to end up doing it almost all of it, CG. And I got to like CG a lot more in the process. But what was interesting in the process was I kept trying to make the CG look less perfect. The critics then said bad special effects. I was trying to make it look like it was more strange and more distorted. It's kind of like, you know, Ray Harryhausen's things. They're not perfect, but they have a quality about them. So the animators would make the branches of the trees do beautiful, articulated. No, a tree isn't going to be like that. A tree's not built to move, so when it moves, it's going to be like that. And it was always a fight with the animators, because they were trying to do things perfectly, and I was trying to make them less perfect, because I thought there might be a kind of quality there that might tickle that part of the brain. And some people love Grimm's. They love the atmosphere and the world we created. Others just say, these special effects aren't very good. I mean, so you continue is all you do.